A man carries a large pack of food and supplies on his shoulders. He hikes up a steep mountain path. Perspiration pours down his face. His muscles ache. His heart pounds. His lungs labor to keep oxygen going through his blood. This is how he chooses to enjoy himself. To make that walk level, turn the pack into an object he must deliver to someone in order to earn his paycheck. And although the exertion is less difficult, it suddenly becomes work. The line between labor and recreation is sometimes very thin, and our attitudes determine whether something falls on one side or the other. Being able to say, I'm free to choose to do this, makes a lot of difference. The very odd thing is that when some people retire, they lose interest in life. They may or may not have ever thought they loved their work, but they found purpose for their life in it. Retirement counselors recommend that people find other interests in absorbing hobbies or recreations even before retirement, hoping that those will continue afterwards. In today's world, we might see bumper stickers saying work is a four-letter word. Traditionally, people have understood the biblical story in Genesis to say that work or labor is a punishment for sin. But there is another point of view that has surfaced, that the labor to which Adam and Eve were sent was actually a call to responsibility and maturity, and that labor can be a good and satisfying thing. The book of Ecclesiastes regards idleness as producing nothing except ruin. The book of Proverbs recommends we look to the ant for wisdom concerning labor, and Aesop, of course, saw the same wisdom in his story of the grasshopper and the ant. The Bible also tells us that God has concern that laborers be treated justly and appropriately. Some years ago in another area, I saw a sign that read, "Work today, paid today." Now that's a bit unusual in today's world, but it could be vitally important for someone who's down on their luck. In Deuteronomy, we're told, "You shall not withhold the wages of poor and needy laborers, whether other Israelites or aliens who reside in your land or in one of your towns. You shall pay them their wages daily before sunset, because they are poor, because their livelihood depends on them." Otherwise, the book tells us that they could cry to the Lord, and you will be guilty. That's law is found more than once in Old Testament writing. Of course, most people today don't live day to day on their wages. Most people get paid weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. To be paid each day would be a pain in the neck because it would be too much bookkeeping. We live in a different kind of world. But the intention behind the law remains the same. Treat laborers fairly. We see the same intentions behind the law regarding the Sabbath. There are many laws in the Old Testament and evidence of them in the New Testament about keeping the Sabbath holy. You do not work on the Sabbath. It was recognized, however, that someone might want to be very holy and not work, but they might figure it was okay to require someone else to work. You know, a servant who has to keep their job, a slave who has no choice. And then there was those foreigners who might not have the same beliefs about the Sabbath in the first place. A person might want to feel themselves to be good and righteous, but still be waited upon and have tasks accomplished by those other people. My parents once knew a man who believed it was a terrible sin to work on the Sabbath. For Sunday isn't the biblical Sabbath, but for Christians it is our holy day. This man always took his wife out to eat on Sundays. He said he would never ask her to break the Sabbath by cooking. Yet, as my parents noted, he never seemed to mind benefiting by having someone else work on Sundays. Biblical laws understood this duality in human nature. They said you just can't do it. Whether a person is slave or free, foreign or not, you must give them their day of rest. This was not a privilege, this was their right. And again, we live in a different world. Frankly, as a kid, I never could stand the law not to work on Sundays, because my dad was a pastor, and that was the day he worked absolutely the hardest. And as an adult, I understand that working or not working on Sunday itself is not really the issue. The issue is keeping some time and space holy to the Lord. Now, in the movie Fiddler on the Roof, there's this young revolutionary that comes along. Tevye wants him to teach his daughters. And this revolutionary tells the story of Laban and Jacob to Tevye's daughter, because Laban says, yeah, you can marry my daughter Rachel if you love her so much, and you can marry her if you work for 7 years for her. And so that's what Jacob does. He works for 7 years to marry Rachel, but then Laban sneaks his daughter, the older daughter, Leah, into the tent. And the marriage is consummated. There's nothing that Jacob can do. And I said, well, I couldn't give you my younger daughter before my elder daughter. You can have Rachel too if you work for 7 years, more years for her. And so I can't ask for a lower price for her than I do for Leah. And the revolutionary in the movie Fiddler on the Roof tells Sevia's daughter, well, this story tells us that the Bible clearly warns we can never trust an employer. It's a great and funny moment in the film, but the biblical laws are not actually intended to define all employers as automatically unjust. Employers simply had more power. This was recognized, and so laws were formed to give protection to those who worked for them. Again, today's world is different from biblical days. There are still employees and employers, but the economic scene is more complicated. In a sense, we all employ people. The clerk in the store is employed on our behalf. We hire labor done in our homes or in our businesses. A waitress or a doctor is hired, in a sense, to perform a service for us. Government employees in a democratic society are employees of all of us. So that means we all have the opportunity to be good employers, just as we also have the right to ask for incompetent work to be done for us. I know some people think the Bible is impractical, that it doesn't relate to the real world. They are wrong. Yes, those people lived in a different time, and some of the specifics of the law may not apply, but the principle does, and it's very practical. Honoring Labor Day can be said to have its heart in biblical teaching, to tell us that honest and hard work has enduring value, and it has God's blessing on it. That when we have economic power over someone, we are called to use it fairly. This is clearly defined by the Bible. And it tells us also that when we are powerless, it does not mean that we are without value and that we are supposed to have rights. God blesses labor. God also blesses our rest from labor. So may God's blessings be upon you, and have a good Labor Day. Amen.